Okay. Boker Tov. We learned today Lili Nishmat Avigdor Chai Avram Ben Rachalea and Merit Tzvi, and also in addition to that, Shirley Friedman Zichronah Livracha, who was buried yesterday, and also for a zachut for Shlema for all those who've been hurt, injured, physically, mentally during the war. Okay, I plan to do three things today. First is to finish off the Mishnah we were just doing last week. The next is to do the next Mishnah, and then to do a story from the Gemara, which would be a bridge between this Shmaya Naptayon and Shammai and Hillel. So let me just reread. We're going to do Mishnah Yud. It's chapter 1, Mishnah Yud number 10. It's going to reread the Mishnah, and then we'll just take a look at the last line of the Mishnah. Shmaya Naptayon Kiblu Mehem, Shmaya Omer. Ehovat HaMelacha, love work, Snat Rabbanut, and we already said last week multiple meanings of this possibly. And also the last thing which we're going to go into now is V'alti Tvadal Rashut. Don't make yourself known to the authorities. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. Hey, just started. It's okay. Yeah, no. And we just don't make yourself known to the authorities is the line we're going to start with, which is the last line of Mishnah Yud.
Okay.
Okay. So there are a few possible meanings to this. Oh no, I am through the Pirke Avot. That's the whole idea. Yeah, no jaywalking allowed. That's right. Okay. If a person becomes beholden, subservient to the authorities, in other words, we're not talking about someone who takes on a position of authority for the person of lordship, which we saw last week, but a person sort of becomes indebted to the authorities or does things to make themselves known to the authorities that they'll be more aware of them, maybe more in tune with what the government needs or that position or that person needs rather than the needs of, so to speak, the real ruling power, which is Hashem. That's Rabbeinu Yonah says that potentially Hashem can take a back seat. By the way, it's to be extended to anything. Not just the Rashut. But it's not Rishut, it's Rashut. Rashut meaning authorities as opposed to Rishut, which means permission. And they have different shorashim. So Rabbi Yonah. Yeah, so Rashut comes from the word Resh Aleph Shin Taf, like Rosh, like to be in charge of something. Rishut is from a different word of the Harshot, to permit. So what Rabbeinu Yonah says is what he says. Now, I just want to extend it even further than that. This idea of being distracted by something else other than the service of Hashem. It does take us sometimes down the wrong path as far as our time. We get involved in other things. We're involved. We're allowed to get involved. We're supposed to get involved, but sometimes those can take us off the track of serving Hashem. The Rabbeinu Bachya says that you should not seek out to affiliate yourself with a political office in the Beit HaMelech. Does not mean in a democratic society you shouldn't run for government. Maybe one of you knows, I don't know, I ever said this in public, but about 7 years ago, I actually did look into running for office for the Knesset. I actually thought about it. And then I made one after it took about a couple months of soul searching and talking to certain people about what would happen, what would be involved. And I made a decision that I didn't feel like selling my neshama. So I think I'm going to keep it for now. It's on loan to me, so I might as well make a use of it and not sell it. It's not mine to sell. So it's also like get caught up in politics. Again, because politics leads to rules, sometimes it leads to a lot of not such good things. And finally, the Meiri says you should not put yourself in position that you become known to the authorities. What does that mean? I'm going to put it in a different context. There's a story in Sefer Lachim, which I imagine you know, that is the Isha HaShunamit, Shunamit woman. And we know that Eliyahu Hanavi had the next Navi that comes after him is Elisha. So Elisha and his sidekick are going through this Shunaim all the time, and Isha Shunamit makes a special room for him finally, right? Makes all the special stuff, which has allusions to Beit HaMikdash, whatever, it's not the story. And finally, the Elisha is so enamored with this woman who she's done all this stuff for him. She tells the boy he tells his boy with him, says, go to this woman and tell her, what can I do for you? Maybe I could do this or this, or maybe the daber la melech. I could talk to the king on your behalf. Maybe you need me to intercede on his behalf of something. Her response doesn't seem to make sense. Her response is, Betoch ami anochi yoshavet. I sit among my people. Like, what? Like, would you like me to pick up some coffee for you at the makolet? The answer, blue. Like, what? What are you talking about? So what does it mean? So the Midrash tells us that when he said this sentence to this woman, is there something I can do for you? Like me to talk to the king? It was Rosh Hashanah. And he was actually asking, would you like me to talk to Hashem, the Melech, with a capital Hey, so to speak, and talk to the king and ask, is there something I can intercede on your behalf? And she says, no. I'm among my people. What does that mean? I don't want the spotlight on me. I want to make sure that I am, Hashem doesn't need to focus only on me, because once that happens, I'm toast, right? So Alti Vadal Rashut also has this connotation that, let's say, for example, it's like, there's a line from the movie, I think it's Casablanca, round up at the end of the movie, round up the usual suspects, right? So the usual suspects, because they were known to the police. So if you have a person who has a reputation for something that they're a little bit nefarious, or not necessarily they've done something wrong once, I would not, chas v'sholom, would not use your name. Joel, probably. So that could you make yourself almost easy prey for the government. Okay. On the other hand, there's nothing wrong with making a name for yourself. Okay, we have to make sure that you don't want to take out of context a lot of these things and say, oh, we should just live this quiet little life and never do anything for the public. Because if you can make a difference, if you can do something, if you can influence people, go ahead, do that. But it's the relationship that could potentially lead to with the authorities that sometimes could call into question, either could get in trouble more, or as we saw from Rabbeinu Yonah, it diverts your focus in life. Why dafka would that divert your focus more than some other things? Because what is the rashut? What does it mean? Authorities, right? Someone has authority over you. Well, Hashem has the ultimate authority over it. So it's this mixing up the real authority with the secondary authority. Very much like how the king, a king of Israel, would have to walk around the Sefer Torah to always remind himself Hashem is Hashem, and he's not the ultimate leader. Only Hashem is. Okay, so I want to take a look now at the next Mishnah, Mishnah Yud Aleph. This is Avtalion. We're going to look at this, and I mentioned before, I think you guys came in, was we're going to look at this Mishnah, we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to share a story from the Gemara. There's going to be a bridge between the Mishnah Yud Aleph and Mishnah Yud Bet, the two Kufot, the two time periods. Avtalion Omer, this is Mishnah Yud Aleph. Chachamim, Tizharu b'divreichem, be careful with your words. Shema tachuvu chovat galut, maybe because of something you say, you'll end up in exile. V'tiglulim kom ma'im ra'im, hara'im, and you'll end up in a place with bad water. This obviously doesn't make sense if you just translate the words. V'yishtu ha'talmidim ha'ba'im achreichem v'yamutu, and the students who come after you will drink from that water, or we would say the Kool-Aid. V'nimtza sham shem shamayim mitchalel, and through this, the name of God will be profane, meaning be a chil Hashem. Okay, what exactly is Avtalion saying? We're going to take it from a simple level, just plain what it means, and try and do a little bit more, a little deeper level. Everyone has to measure their words, right? We have to be careful with what we say. But what is Avtalion saying? He said, first he's talking to the Chachamim. He says as follows. You have a power. Remember, this couple of Mishnot really are dealing with power, either the power we have or the power we're subservient to. So you're a leader, a chacham, let's say the Rosh Hashiva, the Gedol Hador, the big people, the top tier people. You got to be very careful what you say. Why? Because what you say could be misinterpreted. The misinterpretation could lead to all kinds of problems. I had a friend who would say, don't give instructions that need to be understood, give instructions that can't be misunderstood. Let's be very, very clear in what you're saying. We all know people that when they give us instruction, whether it's directions or how to do something, like start again. No, because there's certain things that they left inside their brain. I still do it once in a while with students. What does it mean to actually do things in order? Like our brains fill in a lot of the blanks. So I would do is I'd be sitting in a room and I say, okay, I want you to tell me what to do. I want you to tell me how to open the door handle. So I'll say, get up, walk over. And I just start walking. Brandon, no, don't go there. Start walking. I say, okay, tell me exactly what to do. Now, when to stop, what to turn. And then say, okay, now open the handle. So I'll go like this. All kinds of things our brains fill in. So on the one hand, the very simplistic levels where is the Payon saying, make sure as a leader, as a chacham, as a whatever you might be in your position, you give instructions and teach and explain and give halacha that's clear and that's not convoluted. It's not misunderstood. It can't be misunderstood because what could happen is it causes a michshol, a stumbling block. And what could happen eventually is galut. We're going to see what that means in a minute, but I want to first talk about what this line means as well. So it's not just a chachamim who have to be careful with their words. Everyone has to be. One of the opinions says, and I didn't know this until I found it not that long ago, and I've tried my best to do this, is don't make decisions when you're very tired, especially halachic decisions. If someone calls me, I get plenty of messages and calls with questions. And if I get a call or a message, let's say after 8:30 at night, if it's black and white answer, it's black and white answer. If it requires me using a few extra brain cells, I'll say I'll get back to you in the morning. Because for two things. One, I'm not sure I'm going to have all the information I'm going to think properly. Number two, it's very likely if I'm very tired, and this is true for anybody, right? That I'll make a mistake, and I don't want to do that. I've been in that position where I've made a mistake, of course, and you have to go about the next day and say, "Oh, sorry, no, really, you shouldn't pull the plug." No. Oops. So that's one opinion. That we have to be careful. This applies to parents, applies to educators, applies to business, it applies to everywhere. It applies everywhere. It's not just chachamim, but we can also interpret. Is the right word? Interpolate? Not interpret, but there's a word. There isn't a word. It's a mathematical word, but I think the interpolate works here. It does. Interpolate. Now look it up. Tell me if I'm using it right, please. Interpolate from what he is saying. There's to extrapolate and to interpolate. I think this is extrapolate. Right? Let me see. Interpolate.
Something with a different nation, something else. Illustrations were interpolated.
Okay, so I'm sort of doing both of them. Okay, I'm interpolating the following, that it is, what does it mean by chacham? It means also, chachamim means the chokhmah. Person has to use their wisdom in such a way, this is not what he says, this is what I'm saying, in such a way that they make sure that when they're trying to give over some piece of information, whatever you're using your wisdom, you have to make sure it's clear as possible. You didn't like that. You just made a face. Everything okay?
No, I think we all think we're doing it clear. No one thinks that giving instructions that are not clear.
From the perspective of the speaker, you're probably right. But the more important, let me ask you a question. You're talking to the speaker. No, I disagree. I'll tell you why I disagree. Because if, let's say, you're teaching me how to become a marketing genius. Okay, I took 2 courses in marketing in college, and so I'm no genius on it. You're going to teach me how to be a marketing genius. I tell you, do me a favor. I don't know how to do this. I need you to be as clear as possible to me. Why am I telling you that?
Yeah, but you don't think I'm always clear.
Maybe.
Why do you think I'm clear?
Wait, could you clarify that, please? No, because it reflects both on the speaker and the listener. It really does. You're right that the speaker would normally think he's being as clear as possible, right? But I can tell you factually that I know there are times when I'm saying something. There are people sometimes do this not very, but fairly often when someone will send me a little bit more of a complicated question, I'll send an answer and I'll say, and if that's not clear, let me know. I do that a lot because I'm not sure I'm always being clear. I think because maybe I left some important step out in my head that I didn't tell you. Oh, and this is also
Because what's clear to you
doesn't mean clear to somebody else. Correct.
For someone else, and you have to be very
right. If I say, for example, if a person doesn't have a Gemara background, and I say it's just a hechatimsa to do something, if you don't know what a hechatimsa is, and I do, I'm being clear, but I'm not being clear to you. It means maybe it also means know your audience. That would be maybe a better perspective.
You have to repeat it like 20 times for it.
Right, so we're gonna start over now. Hi, my name is, we're gonna start over. You're right, you're right. I say, I have an approach in education. I say it works like this. Let's say this class, 25 students, which is unfortunately a small class here, but it's 25 students. 4 or 5 are going to get what teacher says right away. 4 or 5 will not get it even if he says it 20 times. And he's really teaching to the middle. So you have board and board after a few minutes. And then that's why there's something called differential teaching. Differential teaching where you have a group doing this, group doing this. I never did that. I can't do that. It's not how my brain works. But there was something else I was going to say. We're talking about being clear. Oh, no, about getting a question. This is just a parenthetical statement. I've mentioned to you many, many times that over the years, almost every single day, I have someone mention something, I hear a pasuk or read something, and boom, the next thing I learn or open up, that's the topic, right? It happens to me constantly. Well, it was like insane this week. I had to tell like 1,000 people. Someone had called me up, actually saw me on Shabbat, asked me a question. It was not obscure, but not, I think it's maybe the first time I've gotten the question. Not a deep halachic question, but it required some investigation. So on say Shabbat, I sat down, I start looking, and I find some obscure idea, an obscure story that's brought somewhere. I don't remember where it was even. Okay, I call him up, I give him the answer. Then I go sit down, learn Gemara. I turn the Gemara, next page. That's the story. Literally the next thing I looked at. So that's great. That's great. I love it. So Hashem's saying, yeah, keep going. You're on the right track. Now, what does this mean, galut? What does it mean that you would, if you teach the wrong thing, if you're misunderstood, maybe you'll become required to be in exile, or I don't know how he translates your English there. Tell me. You'll be required to go to galut or to exile, liable to be exiled. So let's talk about 2 parts of that sentence. What's this galut? Okay, first of all, there are a couple kinds of galut. One is the one we refer to as being outside of Israel. The other one is when a person an accidental killer would run to an ir miklat. That's also called galut. His Torah says that he's goleh to an ir miklat, but that's not what we're talking about. The ir miklat. We're talking about galut. What does it mean? Galut also could be leaving your city. It says that when a person is knows that they're doing things wrong. One of the things to do is, if they're really able to, is Mishne makom azal. They can move to a different location. But if they can't control themselves, they should goleh themselves. They should exile themselves to somewhere else, and no one will know who they are. So this way, they're going to, if they're going to sin, let them not make a chil Hashem and make it even worse by people that know. Okay, there's different types of galuyot. So here we're talking about the following concept. In Avot Rabbi Natan, it says as follows: that a chacham who teaches something wrong, teaches the halacha wrong, and he causes all kinds of isurim to be done, people doing things that are wrong as a result of that, becomes liable to be exiled from his place. Now, what does that mean? Every single chacham, every single rabbi, every single teacher makes mistakes. You tell me you find someone who doesn't make mistakes, I'll just point to God. That's about it. We're fallible. There's no such thing that we don't make mistakes. But we're talking about a few levels here. Number one, potentially a teacher, a rav, or a chacham who just throws out answers without really thinking, checking, which goes to the hevu mutunim badin, which we talked about at the beginning. Pirke Avot, you be very judicious and make sure you look up an answer, make sure you're right before you just throw out an answer to somebody. In addition to that, it's not just that they give a wrong answer, but they may be even faced with someone saying that doesn't make sense, it's not right, and prove it as no, I'm right, you're wrong. Now, it's possible that someone could say to me, I'll use myself. Someone could say to Rabbi X, like, with all due respect, I think it's wrong what you just said, and in a nice way, and here's the source. And the rabbi should properly say, oh, okay, didn't know that source. Let me check into it. I'll look at it. I'll compare. Maybe I'm right. Maybe the situation is different. Of course I'm right. Okay, because then you get all full of yourself, which is another topic we've talked about already. So what is this concept of galut? It means that it will not be able to last in the community. He'll have to leave the community out of shame because he's caused so many people potentially to do sin, to do things wrong. Not, if he causes one thing, 2 things, people make mistakes. parenthetically, the shortest Masechta in Bavli is Horiot. Masechet Horiot is all about when Beit Din Hagadol, Sanhedrin, makes a mistake. What happens if Sanhedrin makes a psak halacha and people follow it, and it was wrong? So about the korbanot that the Beit Din has to bring, and people, if a person was a chacham and he knew that for sure that the Sanhedrin was wrong, but said, so you'll burn, not me. Then he brings the korban, all kinds of interesting. What I'm saying is it's built into Torah mistakes. We know that we're going to make mistakes. That's why we know that if a person makes a mistake in Shemona Esrei or in a bracha, I have a sefer at home called Shkiot Miyavim. It's all about when you make a mistake in davening or brachot or something like that. So it's not just stam the guy makes a mistake. We're talking about someone who's consistent in it, someone who doesn't want to listen to reason, someone who just always feels he's right, that or she, that's a problem. And then eventually causes the person, their students especially, or himself, to be gone from the community. And what happens as a result? They end up going to a place of mayim hara'im, bad water. So if you have a smidgen of what's the word? Dimion, imagination. So you can take yourself right away to what this might mean. Doesn't mean you're going to go to a place that has polluted water. What's water? Ein mayim ela Torah. Correct. Right? Yeshayahu says, whoever's thirsty, let him go and drink water. Ein mayim ela Torah. So mayim ra'im is bad water. What's bad water? Polluted Torah. What's polluted Torah? And we're going to see why this became so important for Shmaya to make this statement in a minute. Twisting Torah, using Torah the wrong way, place that person then takes along their misguided Torah perspective and makes it even worse. They go to a place, to another community, and they have all these wrong ideas, and now they're going to start spreading them, or where they end up as a place of mayim ra'im, like Torah is already misinterpreted. Now, how does this fit into Shmaya's life? Yes, you're going to say something? Mm-hmm. Okay, let me read this. Make sure they got this on the screen before. Here we go. Okay. Shmaya and Avot lived in the time of the Tzdukim, the Sadducees. Next week we start Bezrat Hashem Tuesday evening Jewish history class, and one of the early parts of the things I'll be discussing the difference between the Tzdukim, the Prushim, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees. That'll be early on. Talk about that. But just a little bit of who were these people, the Sadducees, who were living in the time already of Shmaya and of Avot. I'm going to read just a list of things that they believed, that Tzdukim believed. That they had strict adherence to Torah, but the Torah shebe'al peh was not sacred. Didn't say that it didn't exist, like the Karaim, but that it wasn't sacred. It wasn't as important. A person's circumstances in this world are what person has earned in the eyes of God. The soul dies when the body dies, and there's no such thing as afterlife. Angels do not exist. That's actually the topic of Sunday night's Tefillah class this week. No temple means no Jerusalem. They believe that the temple's destroyed, then game over. Free will, God is in charge, but God does not have knowledge of the outcome. So I would say that these are just a wee bit off the beaten path of what would be called what became known as Rabbinic Judaism, which we'll talk about, that comes after the time of the Beit HaMikdash, and pre-Beit HaMikdash destruction of the time of Prushim, what we call today the Orthodox Jews. Every generation, I guess, has their titles. So, okay, so so since they're in the time, since Shmaya and Avot are in this time period, they're very concerned that, and remember also, this is the early days, this is just the early days of Christianity as well. So then they're fighting up against the Tzdukim, the Essenes, also against the early Christians. A lot of waters that's coming against them. So trying to make sure that this doesn't happen to a person based on their teachers and their rabbis or whatever else might be that caused them to go off the derech. Okay, I'm going to read something else to you. Yeah, because this fits in the same topic. When he says Chachamim, he said, "What be divrechem?" that you have to be careful with your words. Avtayon poneh al morei haTorah shel zmano. That Avtayon turns to the teachers of Torah of his time period. Heim hachachamim u'miya'etz lahem. He suggests to the chachamim livchon hetev hetev et divreihem, to really think and choose their words very carefully. Kodem shem motzim otam mipihem, before they say them. Einu mechaven lichlal dvarav shel chachamim. So this is an opinion. I forgot. I didn't write down who it's from. He's not talking about everything that the Chachamim are saying. He's saying, he's putting it in context of these two Mishnayot. He's specifically talking about anything that has to do with the government. And he's referring to either the time period, because he used the time of Chashmonim, or talking about Herod. Because if they do misspeak, as the word is used nowadays, they are potentially able to awaken the anger, arouse the anger of the leader. And as a result of that, the Chacham is going to have to leave where he is, and to go into, literally go into exile from his hometown. That which the result of that would be very, very strong. We saw before that Shmaya said, be careful, don't become known to the authorities. So this, he says, is a connection to that end of that particular Mishnah. Okay. There's one other interpretation that I thought was brilliant of what does it mean of Chachamim. And to me personally, I think it's great. This is brought in the Amloez. He says as follows. We all know teachers, rabbis, people who may have the ear of the public, who say one thing and for themselves do something else. Right? Here's how you should daven. Here's how you should learn. Here's how you should get tzedakah. But that's not how they practice. What we'd say today is practice what you preach. Watch your words. Be careful what you say. Don't just say it. Live what you're teaching as well. That's also important. There's a if I ever talked, it's a weird topic, but I ever talked in here about the what's it called? The Devil's Bible. Was it called that? Remember, it's okay. There was a guy, name escapes me. I used to remember the name by heart. Shoot, it'll come to me. This man worked at a carnival, and was that maybe it was in the 50s or 60s? I don't remember what year it was, what time it was. And he would see all these preachers that would on Sunday would go, and church would rail against the Satanic Bible. It's called the Satanic Bible. Rail against all the sin and everything else, and they would come to the carnivals not dressed with their collar or anything, and they do all this terrible stuff because carnivals weren't just throwing balls to catch goldfish. And he said that basically God is not God, and there's no such thing, and this world is ruled by Satan. And he wrote a Bible called the Satanic Bible, not the Satanic Verses, which is by Salman Rushdie. That's something else. And I also remember his name. Oh, it's going to come to me in the middle of the night. Why I even mention that? Because this guy who wrote this book was influenced by seeing the equivalent of what we call echad b'peh v'echad b'lev. What they say one thing, but internally there's somebody else. Doesn't mean, I'll give you an example. I teach about daven, right? And I try my best to daven properly. Doesn't mean my mind doesn't wander. Doesn't mean I'm not always paying attention. It happens, okay? But I don't say I'm going to teach all about davening and not daven, right? Or I'm just going to go there and just sit and stare at the ceiling, okay? I would hope. So that's this concept here of hisabu b'divreichem means, be careful what you're actually saying, and make sure, on the one hand, you make sure you're saying it clearly, so you don't cause all kinds of problems. And in addition to that, you want to make sure that you follow what you're actually saying. Okay, but now there is something to that sometimes. Let me explain. What you said was that there are times, or certain cases, sometimes a rabbi will say you can eat this, but he himself would never eat it, touch it. Okay. Generally speaking, that's not a good thing. But there are times when that's actually a fine thing. There are areas in halacha, most areas of halacha, there are gradations of what's called the chatchila b'diavad, like the best way to do it and then not the best way. So let's say somebody bought a certain food, and it's a questionable hashgach. Is it potentially kosher? If it's for sure not kosher, it's not kosher. The rabbi can't say it's fine, and I won't eat it, but you can eat it. But if it's a matter that, for example, someone asked me, can I eat, who lives here, can I eat a Milky Way bar as chalav nachri, or avkat chalav nachri, which is it's not chalav Yisrael. So I will eat chalav nachri. So let's say I don't. Say I only eat chalav Yisrael. So I said, I won't eat it, but you can. Well, does that mean I'm not doing what I say? And said, why should I tell you to eat it if I can't? I would say it's chalav nachri. Because I would ask, do you eat chalav nachri? The person says yes, then b'simcha. That's fine. Because there's no one greater than Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal, from whom we rely to have chalav nachri. Because in the 60s, he wrote this famous tshuva, and it applies now. And it's the basis for understanding that when you travel, if you go to China, for example, you can't touch the milk. If you go anywhere in the EU, you can't. EU, you can drink the milk, because wherever there are protocols and governmental procedures to make sure that the milk is the milk what it says, then you're allowed. That's what Moshe said. Then you're allowed to have it. And by the way, I've mentioned this before. Just again, this is a digression of a digression. The idea of what's called chalav Yisrael is not a chumrah. It's the halacha. We are makil to drink chalav nachri, or not non chalav Yisrael. That's the kula. But someone says they can't say you can say I'm machmir. That's fine. It's like saying I'm machmir and putting on tefillin, because I put them on every day. That's the halacha. You put them on. But it's the halacha. And I didn't know that myself until many, many, many years ago. I heard a shiur from those you know, Rabbi Yosef Bechhofer. Genius. Anyways, so he was giving a shiur at our shul many, many years ago on the night of Shavuot. He was talking about chumras and pulas and stuff, and he said that. I said, what? So I went and grabbed the Yordea. Sure enough, that's how I didn't know. You know, we all get ingrained in our head, you know, chumra, machmir. Anyways, and then it ends up by saying that as a result, that it's going to mess up the students, right? Again, this follows just, we take this into historical context, we understand that because of B'chil Hashem, again, you become a person in those days, become a tzaddik, you could become a Christian. Here nowadays, we could say he chose off the derech, or he just chooses, God forbid, another religion. That I can tell you factually. I have a couple of friends. Haven't seen it for many, many years, so I used to have friends. That didn't sound right. I used to have a couple of friends. They left religious Judaism many, many years ago, and all because of one teacher. And the guy was really not a nice person. I'm not talking about a molester or something like that. That's a different story. That's also a much worse situation. But I'm talking about where the way he taught and how he taught and what he said made these kids think like, and they were 13, we were 13, 14 years old, and very impressionable, and just turned them off completely. They had blood on their hands, on the teacher's hands. Okay. Yes, then when they get older, they can learn about what does it mean to become tshuva and then come back. It's just one teacher. Okay, we're thinking logic. You're not talking about a point where the child is so impressionable. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Impressionable, where it really imprints on them some things for the rest of their life. Okay. I want to send it to your phones in the group. I want to send a story and read it to you. Select this and this. And you can choose to just listen. You can look at your phone, whatever you want. I'm going to read this. Now, before you look at it, let me give you some background on what I'm about to talk about. The next Mishne, next couple of Mishne, are going to deal with the two of the most famous of the Zugot, which is Hillel and Shammai. First, I'm going to correct a misunderstanding that seems to be pretty prevalent. We have all heard of Hillel and Shammai. We've all heard of Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. It's not the same thing. Hillel is Hillel, Shammai is Shammai. Beit Hillel are the students of Hillel, and Beit Shammai are the students of Shammai. So I'm going to jump to the very end of a story, not this story, something else that's important to understand about we know that they always had disagreements. There were only a handful of times where we paskin like Beit Shammai, I think it's 18, and everything else when Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, or Hillel and Shammai disagree, the halacha is like Hillel. You say that Atid Lavo will be like Shammai. I don't know what that means, but okay. One of the most famous ones has to do with the amount of candles on Hanukkah. Where you start with 1 and move to 2, 3, 4. You start with 8, move down, and each has their reason. Each has his reason, not their reason. But the Mishnah says that in spite of the fact that what Hillel said in certain areas of halacha regarding marriage, and when they may have said it tuman tahara, ritual purity and impurity, or kosher, non-kosher, even though they had radically different opinions on certain things, lo nimna'u, they didn't prevent themselves from marrying between the two families. That's a tremendously important thing, because it's still shalom. You don't keep yourself completely separated into two groups that are warring factions almost. But the reason I want to read this story, it's a well-known story. It's also for any of you who've ever gone through or know people who've gone through the Bagut system here, you'll know that this is always learned in Sifrut. This is the Maseh Chachamim that they bring. I've taught this, I don't know how many times over the years. It's a Gemara in Yoma. If you take a look, I'll just read it to you. If you have it in front of you, I'm just going to skip down to where it says, about 5 lines down, it says, Amru alav al Hillel hazaken. Actually, let me do a screen share here. Okay. Amru alav al Hillel hazaken. They said the following story about Hillel hazaken. There were many Hillels they'll mention in the Gemara. This is the original recipe. Hillel hazaken. Shebechol yom v'yom haya oseh umistaker betarpaik. Every day he went to work and he would make money, amount of basically would say like in shekel, make nothing. What would he do with it? Half of it he gave to the guard at the entrance to Beit HaMidrash to be able to get in to learn. The other half, he would use to support his family. Now, by the way, there are about 100 questions. That's a little exaggeration. At least 15 questions you could be asked on this. I'm not going to get into that because this isn't a Bagut preparation class. If you want to do that at a different time, that's fine. But it's only I'm doing this for a certain reason. You'll see. One day he didn't find any work. He had no money, so he comes to the Beit Midrash. And the guard at the entrance to the Beit Midrash wouldn't let him come in. He says, "Sorry, buddy." What did he do? He climbed, and he hung over and sat on the what do you call the skylight? Is a chimney. This is Hillel. Yeah, right. And he goes up and he's why? At this time, remember, we're in the time period of Shmaya Avot. Hillel is a student of theirs, right? We're going to see that next Mishne next week. But and he wants to hear their Torah, the word of the living God. Obviously, the question is, what the heck? Let's just let him into Baby Josh. He couldn't give them half a shekel. What are they collecting money for anyways? Right? Anybody's going to learn. Different time. So he goes up there and he's lying up there. Amru, they said, Oto Hayom Erev Shabbat Haya. First of all, this was a Friday. Utkufat Tevet Hayta. It was the dead of winter. V'yarad alav sheleg min hashamayim, and a lot of snow came down from heaven. Kishala muda shachar. Oh, it's interesting. The copy here I cut and pasted. It's missing a line. It said that they found on him. Oh wait, maybe it is coming up later. Oh, it's coming up later. So the snow comes down on him. So when dawn broke, now it's already Shabbat. So now the scene changes from the rooftop where Hillel is kind of trying to listen in, and now it's been snowing all night. And now we're inside the Beit Midrash, and Shmaya says to Avtayon, achi, hey, bro. Shouldn't say that. Avtayon, my brother. All the time the house, the Beit Midrash is light. But now it's dark. Maybe it's just a cloudy day. They look up towards the ceiling. They saw a person lying like this over the skylight / chimney. They saw like an image of a person. What do they do? Which is a guzma. It's an exaggeration. They went up there and they found him under 3 feet of snow. I'm saying feet, under 3 feet of snow. Obviously, he would have been dead if it was actually that much. Harkuhu, they freed him, they moved him. They washed him, and they anointed him, and they put him near the fire. They said, this person is really appropriate to be Mechalel Shabbat for him. So obviously there's 1,000 questions. What do you mean just him? Anybody, of course. And why wouldn't they let him into the Beit Midrash? And what's the Shomer doing? Does the Shmayana Fayon know about this Sinun, about this whole business of letting some people in, not letting some people in? This story, if you take a look at if you have it, the next slide, so to speak, on your phone, is also informs a lot of Hillel and Shammai's decisions when it comes to who's Torah open to. Again, I'm not going to get the whole story. If you want to get a different shiur, that's literally a 45 minute to an hour shiur about all the questions and answers in the story and all the verbs that are in the story that really make it something different. There is a Mishne in Avot Rabbi Natan that says as follows: the Hamidu Talmidim Harbe. Now, we didn't get to this Mishne yet, which we're going to come to shortly next week. What does it mean you should have many students? Beit Shammai Omrim, Beit Shammai said they had this is the students of Shammai following Shammai's path. They had a fundamental difference in their approach to whom you teach Torah. Beit Shammai said, Ali Shanei Adam El Mishu Chacham Ve'anav Uben Avot Ve'ashir. Shammai's approach to Torah teaching was, you know what you're supposed to teach? People who are wise, who are humble, who have good stock, meaning have good yichus, and they have money. Beit Hillel said, L'chol adam yishaneh, teach everybody. Whoever wants to learn, teach them Torah. Because there were plenty of people who were no good, who did wrong things among the Jews. And they became closer to Torah. And eventually we have all these people who become tzaddikim. Avsheshet, for example, not Avsheshet. Who was the one that was Avram the learning? It was oh my gosh, Reish Lakish, right. So Reish Lakish, he was a ganef. He becomes one of the big tzaddikim of Am Yisrael. Rabbi Akiva, who wasn't a bad guy, but he was a boor until 40 years old, didn't know how to do anything, right? He becomes one of the greatest tzaddikim we've ever had. So, what is the purpose of my showing you and telling you these two stories? When we see, Bezrat Hashem, the next couple of Mishnah, we talk about Hillel and Shammai. It's not just they have an approach to Torah. It's not just they have that you might see that the story that I mentioned is the story about showing how passionate the Hillel was to learn Torah. Okay, but wait a minute, dude, what about his family? Right? He's so busy. And also the order. He made money. Half he made to pay the entrance to Beit Midrash, and half he paid for Parnassah for his family. Were his priorities? Should be the opposite. Again, if you want to do some research, I can send you some information on it. But it's to show you partially to show you his commitment, to show you the bridge between Hillel and Shammai on one hand, Shmayana on the other, and their different approaches to whom you're supposed to teach Torah. The fact that Hillel was literally locked out of the Beit Midrash, we're going to see a story, not today, maybe next week, of there was this whole hullabaloo when they changed the rules and they said that Bo Bayom on that very day, that Hosifa, I think it was Shloshmiot, they added 300 benches to the Beit Midrash. It must have been pretty empty at that point, I guess. But because then everyone who wanted to learn, because it used to say, whoever was, they actually did it like a test, as it were. As far as Shammai was concerned before that if you're not inside and outside the not perfect, but you're true and honest in everything you say, is what you do and you feel it, you're not coming in. And then eventually they said under the leadership of Hillel, when it gets to generation, everyone who wants to learn comes in. This is all informed by this, partially by this story. And also this is that bridge, like I say, up to this last set of Sugot, Hillel and Shammai, which we'll pick up next week. You're going to say something before.
There was the case where there was an argument between one great Tana and the Chachamim, and he argued he couldn't convince them.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally said, look, if I'm right, let's God change the flow of the water.
He gives three tests.
Finally, gospel.
Correct.
And he got what he wanted from God, but he couldn't get it from different things.
Right. That's good. I'm going to repeat that story. So right now, briefly.
Do a better job. I wasn't clear.
You were very clear, only because I knew the story. Okay, so there's a story. I don't remember the names. That's the problem. That's the sad.
My problem.
Yeah.
But I'm old.
Well, yeah. There's that. If you remember the names, tell me. So there's like,
Bucket?
no, it wasn't. So it's this, like you said, dispute between two major chachamim and
One.
in the chachamim, right? So he said that this is the I'm right, you're wrong, and this is we're right, you're wrong. He said, well, the rule is like the halacha is like me. Let the river run backwards. The second one I don't remember. The third one is that this wall should start to fall, and then proves my point. The wall starts to fall, gets part way and stops. So he says, see, I'm right. And as a batkel comes out from the heaven and says, Lo bashamayim, you may be right, but the halacha is decided down there, not up here. Even though he's right, it's not going to be decided by something from Shemayim. So you follow the halacha that the chachamim come up with, which is very powerful, because it's the power that Hashem has given to the chachamim to make decisions that may not necessarily go with what God really wants, but we do that. Okay, so that's pretty cool. All right, have a wonderful day, everybody.